Here we go, ready or not? Listen, for those of you who have been at my sessions before, I really appreciate you coming back and allowing me to inflict myself on you once again. I think you're in for an interesting afternoon. And for those who've never been at one of my sessions before, obviously, welcome to you as well. I've been dealing with HR matters since, I think it's actually 1976, before some of you were born, all right, is when I first started doing this. I was a staff attorney, house counsel for a huge food service company, and along with being the house counsel, I also handled all the administrative matters, including HR. If we can demonstrate to decision makers and line supervisors that we can actually help them with strategic decision making, with tactical decision making, and with logistical decision making, we're going to get that seat at the table. We're going to actually help to shape policy, to make decisions on staffing levels, on actually on equipment purchases, and so forth. The thing is, unless you and I can actually convince a decision maker that we should be allowed to participate in these things, they're going to hold us off. Think about something. If we look at a ratio, if we look at the percentage of revenue per labor dollar, you would think to yourself that at some point there'd be an economy of scale, that if we have the right people, if we've hired the right people, they're doing a good job, they're very productive, then at some point revenue should raise up much higher than our expenses on labor. If we see that, then that is something to tout. If, however, we see that we are losing more people, that we're gaining more people than we're losing, and in fact, our profitability is going down, that our revenue per dollar spent on labor is actually, the ratio is getting bad, it's out of whack, then we could be an early warning system. And we could actually warn people, hey, listen, such and such is going on. And so truly, and I'm going to repeat this endlessly, we need to focus in on not just the metrics, but what metrics are we using? Who are they important to? What's the foundation of them? It's important, everyone. Because look, how do you do a formula? Well, ordinarily, it's just a simple math problem. You've got a numerator, the top line, you've got a denominator, the bottom line. You do the math, the quotient of the division is your answer. Fairly straightforward. And so it really is very important as we kind of begin to get into this discussion of the metrics, that what metrics are we talking about? What's the data? What does it represent? Who are we, presenting it to? A personal attack is a cliche. You're not doing a good job. You need to get with it. You aren't as good as everyone else. Why would I give you the same rating? Listen, I'm defending you, partner, but I'll tell you something. I'm having a hard time because everyone feels like you're on their coattails. You're being pulled along, that you didn't pull your weight, and yet you're getting the same pay increase that they are. And so I'm defending you this year, but next year you've got yourself a problem. Now, every one of those little cliches means nothing, right? What's the person supposed to do with it if I say to them during a performance evaluation, you're not doing a good job? Just do your job. How can I give you more responsibility? You can't handle what you've got right now. Those are all absolutely useless phrases. But if I say to the person, look, everyone else is bringing in, $5 for every $1 that we're spending on them. And I believe that we can begin over this year. I've got a performance plan I want to share with you, how we can move you closer to bringing in that kind of revenue. Now, I haven't attacked them. Here are the facts. Can they argue with the numbers? No. There's a three-step process. Here are the core, building blocks of this thing. All right, we want to gather raw data. And basically, this is just factual information of all kinds. It's the total number of your FTEs, it's the total head count overall, it's total age of employees, the union employee head count. It's just raw data. It's how many women we have, it's how many men we have, it's how many people we have over 40 years old, it's how many Hispanics we have, and so forth. It's just a bunch of raw numbers. That's the raw data. The thing is, I think that you have to actually ask yourself, where does this data hide in your database overall? And some of it, you're going to have to go find. The revenue numbers, the sales numbers, the profitability numbers, etc. So that once again, you can then have the information you need to actually figure out if our revenues are rising versus our labor costs and things of that nature. We can compare numbers all day. The issue is, what's the story? What story is it telling us? Because again, we're trying to get to underlying truths. And once again, for the benefit of those that don't have this in front of them, under analytics, by definition, in my little participant guide, it's the methodical application of logic to organizational data in order to discover underlying truths. And I know I keep repeating myself, but to me, this is the heart and soul of our whole discussion here this afternoon. It's not that putting together a formula is, a hard thing mathematically. We all understand it. We understood it back in grade school. What's hard is actually determining what is it that you're measuring and what story is it actually telling. Your vacancy rate is important. Why? Because someone has to do the work. I mentioned this paper that Sherm just put out. And I'm not going to go into this in detail, but it really breaks down, hey, it's costing you this, it's costing you that. The more times that you have a vacancy, or the more times people are not at work, it costs you a fortune. And so really, if you are having trouble recruiting, then it could well be you're going to have to change your techniques. And the numbers will tell you that if you'll keep a watch on your vacancy rate. And so everyone, that last heuristic, that's not just common sense, that's reality. The respondent says, look, we have to find a set of numbers that's relevant to each department. And again, this is not something you would ordinarily do in HR, right? So we go to the CFO and just say, hey, great, I'm going to give you that information, but tell me something. Have you allocated a budget to each of the departments? Have you given them an operating budget that I can use for this calculation? Well, ordinarily the answer is yes. So now we actually have a number, a top line number that we can use, divided by the number of people in the department and all that, and we can figure out, are they within the budget or not, and how much revenue are they worth compared to, other things. I'm going to go ahead and talk about a tough one. How do I use metrics to figure out employee satisfaction? How do you measure an intangible, right? Well, what you do is you create surveys. You ask them. You ask them. You create a survey and you put a number value to it. That's how you do it. So you draft questions, you assign values, you undertake the survey, you analyze the results. That's how you do it. You take an intangible, you give it a number, you create a metric around it, and then you do it. There's some new rules that are going to go into effect January 1 of 2015. So those of you that keep the log 300, you need to go to the OSHA website, www.osha.gov, and you need to take a look at the new rules. One of the biggest things is they're changing from the standard industrial classification system as to who's exempt and who is not, to NAICS, the North American Industry Classification System. I am shocked they haven't already done it years ago. The SIC system came into being in 1960, all right? As part of the 1960 census, the Commerce Department did it. Well, in 1999, that was superseded by the North American Industry Classification System, NAICS, but only just now is OSHA switching over totally to NAICS. So there's a new chart, and I particularly want you to take a look at it. These guides basically explain how you manipulate the numbers to see if you're not discriminating in your practices, okay? That's what it's all about. There is Title 41 of the Code of Federal Regulation, and here are the section numbers that actually have all of the individual sections in it. But what is really awesome is they've got all these examples of how you actually break this down. Be aware that as of March of this year, just a few months ago, you now have to, when you're putting an ad out, you have to give people a chance to self-identify in your as they apply to you and all that, your literature that you're putting out there. You have to give them a chance to self-identify as being a veteran or someone who has a disability. All right, everyone, in our last remaining couple of minutes, I want to point out to you that on page 15, all right, I've got key indicator categories. What I was asking you about earlier, these are the things that need to be on your dashboard. So look at page 15. In addition to that, I have let me get past this. I also have some subsets. This is not in the book, but it's in the PowerPoints. You've got subsets that you could use when you're trying to figure out what goes into the denominator. And then the last page talks about, how you actually, put these things forward. Well, everyone, that's kind of the story. I very much appreciate you having been here today. I hope it's been helpful. If you'd like to talk to me, I've got 15 minutes before we do this again. I will be around over the next couple of days. I do want to repeat, if you do end up buying my book, you are going to get HRCI credits. What you do is you get the book, you read it, take a test on the SHRM website, and you get the credits. So anyway, thank you once again. I'll be seeing you around here. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.